All right, everyone, it's 7:30. As you all start getting signed in to the agenda, I'll go ahead and get started so that we can be respectful of your time. We are entering the third week of preseason, so pretty exciting. And as of today, we have 54 teams that have registered with 114 licensed coaches, which is up from zero the last time we talked. So that's been pretty amazing. And then we have 190 riders that have registered, 96 of them in high school and 94 in middle school. A couple of kind of important points for everyone to keep in mind. Team registration fee increase that does go into effect on the 1st of November, which is about a week or so away. And that is going from $20 to $120 on November 1st. So if you haven't registered your team yet, get in there and get them registered before there's that $100 bump in the fee. And this year there is a team registration deadline, which is going to be November 30th, 2021, to be active for this season. So you're about a month and a half away from the deadline. If you are kind of on the fence as to whether or not you're going to have a program this year, go ahead and activate it now for $20, and then that way you are ready to go and at a much less of a fee. And if it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out, but it's only $20. The student athlete registration deadline is going to be January 31st of next year. That is the last date that a student athlete can register for the league and with your team. So make sure that you are being aware of that. And that way it gives teams kind of the ability to tell a student athlete trying to come on late in the season to just say, well, the deadline's passed, but we'd love to have you next season. And that way you're not finding yourself in a situation where you have a lot of student athletes that have been kind of active with your program for a month or so, and now all of a sudden you've got one person that is back to square one, so that takes away some of your coaches, and you're all of a sudden having to do two concurrent programs, one for one student athlete and one for everybody else. Are there any questions or concerns about that? All right. Coming up this coming month, there are three North Carolina grid events that are going to be hosted and put on by Shell Frost, our grit coordinator. And they're going to be Sunday, November 7th in the Foothills Piedmont area, Sunday, November 14th in the Triangle area, and Sunday, November 21st in the Asheville area. Those are the three regional grid events that will be going on preseason. And if you have any questions, you can reach out to Shell and she will get you some information. As well, we'd like for you to be identifying a coach on your team that's going to be the grit coach. This is going to be the point person between the grit program and your team, so that there's one person that is spearheading the charge on ensuring that your student athletes are aware of the grid events and also coordinating all of that with those student athletes. A female coach is encouraged for the role, but if you do not have a female coach that is willing to be the coach, by all means, a male coach is welcome and encouraged. We want a coach on each team, be it male or female, to be the one that is spearheading that program on your team. And this season, we're asking that you do this. Next season, this will be a requirement when you do your team proposal, just like a head coach and a team director. So these will be identified roles on your team in the pit zone. And let's go ahead and get it taken care of so that we can work towards getting even more female participation in both the student athlete and coach roles in our league. What questions do you have about this? All right. Well, let's take a look at some of the important dates that we've got coming up. So November 1st, we already talked about. Uh, the 10/23/10/24 Grit Coaches Retreat, that has not made the minimum. And so that is being canceled due to lack of registration, which is unfortunate. And one of the things that we've been seeing is that lots of people say, oh, well, I'll sign up if it makes the minimum. Well, it doesn't make the minimum if you don't sign up. So this did not make the minimum, but there were plenty of people that expressed interest that it would have easily made the minimum if people had committed. But again, nothing happens without your participation. And so getting your participation in and registered shows that the time that we are setting things up is something that you want to take advantage of. We've also talked about these grid events for our female student athletes and female coaches. Then on December 1st, the regular season is going to begin and that team registration will close. And then January 31st, again, the student athlete registration closes. And on February 1st, race registration opens. And so something that's very important for everyone to consider is that races will be capped at 500 participants. So it will be important for student athletes to get registered as soon as that registration is open, because once those 500 slots fill, there will be no more registration for that race. So if you have student athletes that are going to be very gung-ho for a race, then they need to take advantage of jumping on that early. And I have here the race dates and locations. So we will be March 19th and 20th in Browns Creek, April 2nd and 3rd in Salisbury, April 23rd and 24th Quaker Lake, and May 14th and 15th in Dark Mountain, and May 21st and 22nd in Mayodan. Additionally, June 5th will be the end of this season for the NCICL. What questions do you have about that information?
Hey, Sean, this is Abby
Yes.
Walker. I have a question. As far as registration goes, I don't remember because it's been so long.
Mm-hmm.
Do they have to register? Like, will all of the races be open?
Yes, all the races will be open on that February 1st deadline, start date. And so they can go in and register for all the races.
So they could all be filled?
Yes.
Before they even do the first race. Okay.
Yes.
Good to know. Thank you.
Yes. Unfortunately, we have just, from a safety perspective, identified that our race courses are not capable of handling the number of races, which is why we were wanting to go to a bye-week model. But because we don't have enough people volunteering to step up to stand up another race crew, we're unable to do more races in the same amount of time. So we're relying on one race crew to set up 5 races. What ideally we want to see is another race crew that would be able to set up an additional 4 or 5 races so that we can have a bye-week model and accommodate more student athlete participation. So it wouldn't be 500 per race and that knocks some kids out. It would be 500 per race, but that's essentially 1,000 slots per race for 5 races of the 10 that are offered. So ideally this year, try and talk with your parents and see who would be interested in trying to become a part of the race crew so that we can train them this season as race crew and look towards going to that bi-weekly model or bi-week model of racing next season. Michael says, to help me understand the demand, how many participants do you normally have in a race? So we've had a max of around 600, and the problem being that some of our classes are extremely large, and that puts a lot of pressure on the day so that we end up with lots of passing events. And one of the races, the only race that we had in the 2019 season at Browns Creek, we had a varsity, I would say the top 20 in the varsity in the course of their race, they each passed about 70 riders over the course of their race. And that was basically just their passes with junior varsity riders. So it's a lot of people in a very condensed space, and we're just trying to alleviate those concerns of safety. We have talked about allocated race spots and things like that. There really is no way for us to set that up in pit zone. And so that's something that you're just going to have to encourage your team, those kids who are really interested in racing, they need to get registered as quickly as possible. And so take advantage of that date, and those kids that are really super committed to racing, they should jump on it. I honestly, I don't think 500 is going to be some critical mass of kids. I think there will be spots still left to go around. But for some of the more popular venues like Dark Mountain, Mayodan, Browns Creek at the season one, getting registered early would definitely be something to consider. As far as rain dates, I am not aware of rain dates as of yet, but I'm sure that we are actively working on that, and we'll let you know if and when we come up with some rain dates. And also there was a earlier question about OTBS 101s. And so just as a reminder to all head coaches and team directors, OTBS 101s are only offered in that preseason block. And the only time that we will offer an OTBS 101 is if we have a brand new team stand up in the season. And then we will do a OTBS 101 for that team. And if there are open spots in that team's OTBS 101, we will offer those to the rest of the league.
Hey, Sean, if I can jump in for a quick second.
Go for it.
So just a little bit of flavor for the race numbers. So historically, when I looked back, we weren't hitting 500 for the majority of our races. Now, as Sean said, when we had Browns Creek in 2020, it was huge. We were over 600, and that's where we saw the issue. No idea what this season's going to look like. Obviously, we've had a lost season because of COVID, and then we had an adventure season because of COVID. And so demand could be huge, or it could kind of falter back to what it was. But what we historically always saw was our first race was our biggest race in term of numbers. And then it kind of faded off from there, depending on where teams wanted to travel. So will we sell out every race? Maybe. Will we sell out right off the bat? I don't know. So obviously, as Sean said, I would encourage those that know that they want to race to register. That being said, as you can see, we're going to be really strict on no refunds on that because you're taking spots. So if people are registering for races, they're registering for races.
Hey, Sean or Mike, this is Ryan Donnell. I don't know if I missed it, but what's the registration cost per race? Is it $20 again?
Sean's on mute.
I'm on mute. I'm off mute. It's $20. Sorry, I was muted so that I didn't talk over Michael, and then Michael stopped talking, and I stayed muted. There is a rain date of 4:30 and 5/1, and that will be Mayodan. So, yeah, old team that's doubled in size. You need more approved coaches. Like I said, OTBS 101s are going to just be offered in that preseason. And we did offer, we had 100 slots of OTBS 101s in August. And we found that to be a really effective time for us to give those OTBS 101s. Otherwise, Michael and I, and now our new coach supporters are just stretched way too thin, and that starts to eat into our ability to work with our teams during the season as well. So it's something that we're all trying to come to grips with, but we are trying to offer more OTBS 101s in that preseason time. This is a good time for those new coaches that you have to really like let them see what team culture is like for a season, see how committed they are. We've seen lots in the past when we were running around and doing OTBS 101s hither and yon throughout the season that people would come and take OTBS 101, and then we were getting feedback from head coaches and team directors that, yeah, these people took OTBS 101 and then they never really did anything with the team. So we were stretched very thin, working very hard, but not seeing much return from it. So make sure that in this preseason time in August that you really are reaching out to your coaches that are going to be returning and just really encouraging them to be looking at OTBS 101, talking to them about it this season. That way you can make it, to where they're working towards that and more committed to your team. What other questions do you have?
Okay, gotcha. Sean, this is Diana Blunt. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. Sorry, we're on the road.
No problem.
And first of all, can you sign Jeff and I in?
Yes.
Okay. And I think we have a question about the date.
Okay.
Cutoff date for student athletes. So
Yes.
obviously, this probably doesn't apply to all the time teams here in our league.
Mhm.
However, we have students that transfer in whose families are military. One great case in point is Ian, who his dad was part of the Maryland League, and they transferred in March last year. And had we been racing, he would have wanted to race because he was a strong rider in the Maryland League. And so is that a set in stone policy? Is there a way to work around that if we have students that move into our area who are in that status?
So in the particular instance of a student athlete that's registered already in another league and then transfers to us in season and wants to participate in our league, then we can work with that on a case-by-case basis. But it really is, that January 31st, we have to set a cutoff so that we are not stressing out teams with riders trying to join, brand new in February, in March. Right. And we've had multiple instances of kids like all of a sudden learning that there's a race series and like, oh, well, I want to come race. And they're just joining just to do the races, which is not necessarily the spirit of what it is that we're trying to do. And so that presents issues for those teams. And so that January 31st is a set in stone policy, and we will look at some sort of leeway on a case by case basis, and you would just need to contact us, and we would work through that with you.
Thanks, Sean.
No problem.
Sean, it's Eric in Durham. A quick question about the race registration. If would registrations be able to be transferred to another student athlete if somebody who's registered can't attend or chooses not to after they've registered?
No. And the problem being that it gets way too complicated and is not an equitable situation for other student athletes that aren't on that team who didn't get into that slot because that person took it. So really it is about, doing the race. And like Michael said, the likelihood of this 500 rider cap really affecting much of anything is we're not necessarily concerned that that's going to be an issue. But this is just one of those things that we have to put in place in order to make sure that we're doing safe events.
Yeah, of course. Sounds good. Thanks.
No problem. What other questions do you have?
I have a question about, this is Eric again, the
Mhm.
Grid Ambassador application. I know the deadline was yesterday based on the Instagram post, but the application had the deadline as Saturday the 22nd. Do you know if Shell is still taking applications, or was yesterday in fact the deadline?
Yesterday was the deadline.
Okay. Thanks.
No problem. Yes.
Sorry. This is Diane again. Sorry, I have
Okay.
another question. The race venue in Salisbury, is that Big Leaf?
Is that Big Leaf Slopes? No. No.
But can you say where that venue is?
It's I can't remember the name of the park. It's like it's a community
Salisbury
park in
Community
Salisbury.
Park.
Yeah, Salisbury Community Park, and it's a new venue for us, and they have a very nice trail system that will definitely accommodate us much better than what we saw with Big Leaf Slopes.
Okay, thank you.
No problem. Was there another question?
Yeah, maybe a suggestion. I don't know.
Okay.
I just worry. I live in a affluent area, so I
Mhm.
know all my students will sign up for all 5 races immediately,
Mm-hmm.
or at least most of them. Just I would suggest if we hit a cap, maybe have some sort of return policy or cancel policy or something. You can, you know what I mean? I don't. I foresee my team being the jerk team that takes up 60 slots. Right. So,
I appreciate that candor.
Sounds like a
I-
coaching issue. No, I'm just kidding.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like, there's just not that kind of fidelity for us in the pit zone, unfortunately. Like, and we talked about various scenarios, and it was all just like anything that we did that was like a, we'd open up half the slots at this date and half the slots at this date. It was all going to have to be manually done by us in the back end. And so it was just not something that we were going to be able to accommodate. We just don't have the manpower. So unfortunately, this is the only way that we can put it into place. And yeah, we're worried about large teams squeezing out small teams and all that kind of stuff. We're just going to have to see how this plays out this season. Like I said, this is a product of not being able to do a bye-week model simply because we do not have enough manpower to stand up to race crews. And so those of you, especially on big teams that have lots of student athletes, you have lots of parents to draw from. This is a conversation to have about getting them involved with shadowing race crew this season so that they can get trained and they can be ready to be race crew next season so that we can move to this bye-week model and not have to impose what could very well be inequitable and unfair caps.
And just to add on to that, a couple of you on the call, I know I've had conversation with or emails with about kind of joining the team a little bit. And, this season I look forward to connecting more and having you kind of join us on race weekends to train up and figure out where you want to fit in. But as Sean said, we're going to need more people. The idea is that we can move to that bye-week model next season and alleviate some of this stress that we see on the system, but also potentially pick up new venues because we'll have smaller numbers at each race venue potentially. And so one of the things for those that weren't historically in the conversations with the bye-week model is in that situation, a team, would go into the lottery system and pick their race venues. So we would be able to look at team sizes and overall fit for the venues and then limit the number of teams there. So we'd have more equal opportunity for the majority, if not all of your students to have potential to race at these venues. So the problem that we're all talking about potentially facing this season, again, would be alleviated moving to that model. So we hope that if we do run into a squeeze and, we don't want to see kids not be able to participate, but that could be the reality of the season. The more we can get people to kind of jump on board and help out, then we can make sure that it's not an issue in the future if it is in fact an issue this season.
Can I
And-
chime in something here?
Yes.
Okay, so
absolutely.
I think it's kind of important to touch on the fact that this isn't something that we didn't see coming. These are problems that we knew we were going to have if we didn't move to that bi-week model. And we have put requests out for people interested in learning to take on these roles, and we got no response in the past. So it's definitely something that if you have somebody that you feel would be good for that role, like definitely encourage them to contact someone, because it's not for lack of trying to find people to fill the roles on our parts. I think it's something that comes down to teams that have more interaction with coaches on a regular basis, encouraging them to contact us.
Is there somewhere we can find the information, like what being on a race crew looks like, to give to the parents?
Like the duty description,
Yeah, like are they in charge of 5 races, or I guess I don't really know. I've only been to one race.
Yeah, unfortunately, that's been something that, when we were having races, there were plenty of people kind of seeing all the work. And so that was something that was a great way for people to sort of understand what was being done. And there is a set of descriptions of those roles, and we can republish that and get that back out to everyone, because we do have that, so that you can have some conversations with people. And also something that, I know that we're all growing, and we are seeing this post-COVID increase. And one of the things that I think it's really important to understand and to be thinking about is you can't grow beyond what you're capable of handling. And so, if you're looking at your coaches and you don't have the coaching staff to accommodate 100 student athletes, then you shouldn't take on 100 student athletes. And I think some of the bigger teams, and the one that comes to mind most is Pisgah Rage. The fact that they have a waiting list and they have a whole system for allocating kind of scores to students to decide who fulfills the open spots so that they grow in a controlled way is really interesting, and something to reach out to Jan and Mike Murphy and kind of get their take on, because it's something that you don't want to grow beyond your capabilities, because we're not so much in the position anymore to just take every kid we can find, because we've gotten every kid we can find, and then they brought 12 of their friends, and so now you're overwhelmed. You don't want to lose the best parts of your program to overwhelming numbers. And so be thinking about that as you're seeing all of this interest, like what can I truly handle?
And I just wanted to add, for those larger teams, or for any team that is facing a ratio issue of coaches to student athletes, and you want to be able to better control registration, I did share in the coaches Facebook group a new feature with the Pit Zone, which is the Register Ready feature. And so team directors and head coaches can turn this on, and basically you have control of when a student athlete can register with the team. Because currently the way the Pit Zone works is, once you're in the system, as soon as registration opens for the league, your kids and families can go register for your team, whether or not you're ready for them. And so this would allow you to turn on this feature, and no one would be able to register for your team until you actually go into that student and say, boom, now you can register for the team. So for teams with wait lists, this actually helps manage that really well. So it's shared in the Facebook group. We do have a coaches conversation coming out Thursday, so I'll put it out there as well. And so feel free for your team directors, head coaches to look over the documentation. It looks like the implementation is really easy. It will just be one more thing that you'll need to go into the pit zone for to actually allow students and families to register, which again, for the teams that need it, it's probably a lifesaver. We also had a question in the chat just about, how many people do we need on a race crew? And so Sean touched on it a little bit. And as he said, we'll dig up some of those job descriptions and share them out. I will say they're written by National, and they say some things that we do, but it's something that you kind of have to see in person to really get a full flavor of. I think if your parents just come to a race venue, whether or not they're actually shadowing us or working with us, they'll start to see kind of the magic and the effort and the work that goes into it. But just to give a picture for people who haven't really been to races, is we have a committed crew from the league level. And, Sean, you can correct my numbers if I'm wrong, but it's probably 8 to 10 of us per race that are out there consistently. And then we have about 100 volunteers each day coming out to help out. And so, we certainly need that from our parents and stuff. We can't have the races without all that support. But the real support we're looking for is kind of expanding that core crew who are going to be able to commit to attending pretty much all of the race series. Obviously if we expand half the race series or however it works out, but you're going to commit to, coming out to these races and spending the weekend with us to get the core set up, get everything going, handle issues. Obviously, whatever their skill set is, we'll find a place for them and get them in there. We're going to need timers. We're going to need course marshals. We're going to need people who just like to hammer in stakes, people who like to set up courses. There's some really fun jobs, but it is 100%. It's a commitment, to coming out to these races. And the challenge that can come, just to be upfront and honest, is that if you're a coach with the team and we go to a bye-week model, you may or may not be going to a race weekend that your team is at, based on where we need you. Obviously, we would try our best to be like, you're going to work every race that your team's going to be at. But I guess that could be a potential down the road, that there could be, we need you over here.
What other questions do you have?
I have a question.
Okay.
This is Abby. Is it possible for, like, if we have a couple teams in our area, are we allowed to get together with a small, with not the whole teams, but a couple of kids and do like a mock race, if you will, if we handle all of it together? Say if you have a bunch of kids that don't get into the races or that don't want to, can we create our own, like, not a NICA race, but just almost like a practice race? Are we allowed to do things with other teams?
You can ride with other teams, but when we start talking about races, that's a risk management issue. So we would have to talk to you about that.
Okay.
There are other leagues that do that, but then you're going to have to have EMS out there. You're going to have to do a whole bunch of services out there. And so it becomes a cost issue, obviously a safety issue, but we can talk about that. Like I said, there are some leagues that do what they're calling local dirt, and it is that, but it does take extra training, which is, I'm going to say, not an issue. Like, we would be willing to help work with that. That's a issue that's going to come from the national side of capacity to do that. But then it is the added risk management of then having EMS services out there and making sure, because basically you're suggesting a mini NICA race, obviously on a smaller scale, but we have to maintain our risk management.
Okay, thanks.
Mm-hmm.
Other questions?
I could pose a question to Shell. Hey, Shell, thinking about this grit weekend down at Dark Mountain, it's just so early. What's your thought on, if we succeed at getting some girls to sign up in the next 2 or 3 weeks, but they're beginners? Is it open to, the truth is, like, we've not even assessed some kids that could, in theory, we could encourage to come down to the grit day. What's your feeling on that?
So the emphasis of these events is going to be a lot stronger on just building community and giving them the chance to get to know other girls. There is going to be rides, but they're going to be super, super beginner friendly because we realize being early in the season, we're going to have a lot of kids that possibly have never even been on trail before.
Yep.
So it's going to be a lot of games, a lot of activities together, crafts, yoga, a mechanical clinic. So they are going to be able to ride, but it's not going to be like a challenging trail ride. So
Perfect. That's what I needed. Thanks.
And totally challenged by choice. Like Shell set it up really well that it's a longer event. And so it gives more opportunity for girls to come for the portions that they can or want to participate in. So, you know, like Shell said, I think it's going to be great for those new girls, hopefully empowering. And then if they want to stay for the ride, that's great.
And female coaches are welcome also, right?
Welcome and invited. Yeah.
Is Jeff teaching the track stand skill?
Oh man.
I'm sorry, was Wilkes invited to this meeting?
I will say too, because it's so early in preseason and a lot of coaches aren't fully registered yet, it's going to be hard on my end to effectively get enough coach volunteers. So if you have coaches that you think would be interested, please do encourage them to finish getting registered and contact me, because it would require me to keep sending out emails almost daily in order to catch all the coaches as they get registered in Pit Zone. So I will send out an email requesting that coaches help, but if you have coaches that would be interested and willing to come and help, please encourage them to reach out to me.
Is there a requirement that they're level 2 or anything?
No.
Okay. And what if our grit coordinator is a male? Did they come to that or no?
I will take whatever coaches are interested in helping. I mean, as long as they're coming to help us get more girls on bikes, that it doesn't have to be a female coach.
All right. Well, if there's no more questions.
Can I just want to make a comment on
Yes.
registration process, just because we've seen this question a little bit. And so I just want to make sure that we get information out there. So with the new learning management system, there's been some changes. Obviously, we've seen some of the curriculum changes, which are positive. I thought it was a little bit more engaging than stuff in the past, which was great. But one of the things that we're seeing as a downfall right now is historically, I'm a level 3 coach. As soon as my first aid expires, then they would downgrade me down to a level 1 coach because I wouldn't need first aid, but I'd still be trained. The new system is not working that way. If you are a level 3 coach and you default on your first aid, you actually lose all license. So you would not be able to work with your team until you go back in and complete the level 1 training. So that's a challenge right now, but it's something that we need to be aware of. So if you know your first aid is going to expire, even if you know your first aid is going to expire and it's going to bump you to a level 2 coach, like I have basic first aid as my backup or something, it's actually going to kick you out and it's going to, make you take that level 2 training. So it doesn't give you the highest level and kind of filter down as it used to. So that's just something to be aware of. So we do need to watch our licenses as we go through the season. So if you see a coach with the red exclamation mark, please make sure that we're checking to see what that is and that coach gets in there and completes their training, because realistically they would be an unlicensed person working with our kids. That's just not a good system that we want to work in.
And just as a little hack to the system, if you are like right now I'm level 3, but my WFA expires the end of October, which is going to knock me to level 0 because I won't be able to get a WFA until December 4th. But I've gone in and I've taken the level 1 and the level 2 coaching requirement, risk management and other videos. I got CEU credits for those because I did them while I was a level 3, even though they're not required. but whenever I lose my level 3 status due to the WFA, it'll knock me down to a level 1. I won't have to do that. But if I waited until it knocked me down to a level 0 and then did level 1, it just says that's a required training for you, because at that point you're a level 0 coach. So if you are in that weird gray area where you're going to lose your status, go ahead and knock those out now. And the level 1 is worth 2 CEUs if it's not a required training for you, and the level 2 is worth 4 CEUs if it's not a required training for you. So that's 6 CEUs, and level 3 coaches need 9 every 3 years. So just something to keep in mind to get some type of benefit from the cost.
Is there a way, as coaches get contact hours for level 2 during the season, that they can level up from 1 to 2?
Yeah, if they've done everything and just as they're waiting on contact hours, they just do that contact hour attestation, and then that moves them up to level 2.
Okay.
Is there going to be any leeway on the dates? Because I'm taking the WFA the weekend of the 6th and the 7th, and my first aid for my level 2 expires on the 9th, and the WFA is for level 3.
So you mean, is there leeway?
So like if I submit it on the 8th or on the 7th when I get home and the league doesn't approve it before my first aid expires on the 9th, am I going to get knocked down?
You would get knocked down, but then as soon as they approved your certificate, you'd be right back up. So national, in November, they'll probably be pretty quick on approving stuff. Like now is the time where you see a lag. But yeah, I mean, as soon as they would approve that, all that training would stay. So you would be back up to level 3. So you might be a level none for a day or two. I would just pay attention to that before going to practice.
Okay, well, I actually did level 1, so I'll be covered there. But
cool. Then there you go.
Yeah.
All right, perfect.
And just a reminder, like that's all NICA National. That's not us, or else I would definitely be on Michael Eastwood's case about not putting your stuff in.
Hey, when I was at National, it got done quick. No, I'm just kidding. Like we get a lot. Like there'd just be 300 or so certificates to review in a day. So I mean, they do work diligently to get it done. So no shade on them.
But all that pit zone management is all done at National. If you get knocked down from 3 to none, are you required to start over and having to go through all of the level 1 and 2 videos again? So if you get knocked down from 3 to none, and then you do nothing until you redo WFA and CPR and go back to level 3, the answer is no. But in my case, if I'm going to get knocked down to level none in October 31st, and I'm trying to do some preseason events in November, I've got to do that training to get up to level 1 so I'm a certified coach and can participate with the team. So level nuns can't do anything with the team, and if they can just wait it out until they get their stuff in order, by all means.
I have a question. This is Abby.
All right.
I'm wondering if any other coaches are seeing background checks take a long time. I know I emailed you and Sean, and you don't know why it's going on, but I've got coaches waiting weeks for background checks that I can't use them. So I'm just wondering if it's a system thing or if anybody else is having that issue.
The only thing that I know of from working at National and actually running the backgrounds is a couple of years ago, a lot of government agencies were hacked, Charlotte being one of them. Georgia is the biggest one that really got hit. And there was a lot of hacks on courthouses, so they could not share any background information. Their system was just totally trashed. And in Georgia, it kind of held over. And so there were some counties in Georgia that we couldn't get approval for coaches, which really sucked for them. And so if some of these coaches have moved and lived in a lot of different places, that could be one thing that's slowing it down, depending on how those areas were impacted. So you'll have some courts now in various states like reporting through paper instead of doing it electronically, so it slows the system down. it's also systems talking to each other. So every once in a while, you'll just see something get hung up for absolutely no reason. But yeah, I would have your coach maybe log into their Sterling account just to see if they can see any issue that they've flagged. They can reach out to National. I just don't know that they'd be able to say anything else. I mean, they can connect with Sterling just to say, hey, what's the disconnect here? Sometimes it just takes a little bit while. That could be because the coach moved a lot. It could be because their name is flagged because there's offenders or someone who has a criminal past that's very similar. We can work through that, but I would have them first look at the Sterling side of things and then reach out to National. But 2 weeks it's long for the average coach, but it's not unheard of. But yeah, I wish we could do more.
Okay, thanks.
All right, just a generic question. If we're having trouble getting someone registered in Pit Zone, you guys know who I would reach out to?
What kind of trouble?
Just like technical, like they're clicking on links and they're not working or whatever.
You can direct them to me, and because I can see some of that stuff, so I can see if I can troubleshoot before sending it to National.
Yeah, it's the second child of a family that just added. Maybe I did something wrong when I registered.
So they're able to register one kid, but not the other?
Right.
Yeah, send me their info. I'll see what I can do.
Thank you.
All right. Any more questions? Awesome. Well, everyone, have a good night. And as always, if you have any questions, you can reach out to myself or Michael, and we'll be happy to help. And if you have any grit-related questions, Shell is your go-to. And other than that, we will talk with you again soon. Bye.
Thanks, everybody.